dancer. Okay, any other hobbies?
Photography.
Oh yeah, you did tell me that.
I guess, does martial arts count as sports?
Yes.
Because yeah, I've been doing martial arts since on and off since I was 17.
Okay, so what do you?
I've done Japanese jiu-jitsu, Wing Chun, which is a Chinese kung fu, and then Indonesian stick fighting, arnis.
Oh, where do you do this?
Philip Nearing School of Wing Chun in Chicago. There used to be a group that has, I think, since been disbanded, called the Combat Arts Institute, where I learned jiu-jitsu. And arnis is not, that one's harder to find places.
What is it? What does that entail?
So it involves, they call it stick fighting, but really it's a stick or a sword.
Is that?
Well, no, it's just like one stick or two sticks.
Oh, okay.
And like there's a Danny Inosanto, who was Bruce Lee's protege.
Okay.
Was started in arnis and I think eskrima, but basically Indonesian or Filipino stick fighting. And there's a great example of that, which unfortunately is a Steven Seagal movie, is Hard to Kill, I think it was.
Did you say unfortunately?
Oh, yes, yes. Well, and weirdly enough, Steven Seagal is involved in my martial arts world quite a bit. He's since turned out to be who he is. But
We all know who he is.
you know, he was tied into the martial arts world quite a bit, especially in the 90s.
Yeah, for sure.
In my formative years,
Yeah.
watching action movies, he was...
It was him and the other guy. Was John Claude? No, that was
Jean-Claude Van Damme
Yeah,
was
okay.
part of that.
Okay.
There was... there are quite a few. Brandon Lee
Yes.
was making a name for himself. There are quite a few. They were fun. I kind of miss those. It's, you know, like how some will call them edgy comedians and other things like that. Like comedy isn't the same as it is.
They don't make those anymore.
No, they don't, because a lot of it relies on something terrible happening to people that don't necessarily need to.
That's true.
You know.
Yes, that's a good point. That's when I think back. You're right.
But also it relied on just ridiculous ideas of what criminals were, which like actually I think it was Showdown in Little Tokyo, Brandon Lee movie. The main villain, they start off to establish the main villain. He kills some woman in his office, videotapes it while doing it, and has a plate with Coke and a bowl of crack
It was the 90s.
on his desk, just sitting out there like they were Werther's candies.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
And like, I remember watching this during the pandemic a few years ago, and I'm just like, I love Brandon Lee was my absolute favorite. I quite literally cried when he died during filming The Crow. But I just remember, like, this is the dumbest criminal, and he's supposed to be a head of a multi-million-dollar crime organization.
It's not believable.
And he's creating his own evidence for a murder. All while having felony levels of drugs in frame.
We watched it.
Yes, we did.
We watched
But
it.
what's interesting is that I feel like that was, like, in the 90s, people made terrible political decisions. And I think part of that was influence from Hollywood. You know, like Hillary Clinton, thankfully she dialed that back, but the concept of super predators and other things like that. And I think a lot of that was from the sensationalization of crime in movies. You know, and it's also kind of scary watching these movies from the good guy perspective too, because there's like, you know, I've gotten to know more lawyers in the past 2.5 years being a member here than before.
Yeah.
But, you know, there's cops in TV shows. It's a little bit less now. Like, the storytelling is about them finding the evidence.
Yes.
So, but like back in the '90s, it was like Showdown in Little Tokyo. Brandon Lee and Dolph Lundgren of all people. They're both cops, and they just like, oh, this guy's guilty. We know he's guilty. We can't prove that he's guilty with evidence, even though the guy recorded a murder at the very beginning. They're not going after that. They're just going to go kill the guy.
Yeah.
And we all root for that. Which I think like we just all started to, I think as a society, I hope, look at these and be like, this isn't how it works.
Well, so I recently, I love old TV. I love like the cop, like I like Barney Miller, and I like,
Oh wow, you
and
were
I
going
like
way back.
Kojak, and I watch what is it, the one where they
Like
not
Hill
Mission
Street.
Impossible, Dragnet maybe.
Oh wow, yeah.
But no, but I was looking at like the evolution of like the police story and how like you went from the cat in the tree to like
Yeah.
Barney Miller. They stayed in that one place that they rarely left, right?
Yeah.
But then you Kojak, now he hits the streets, and Hill Street Blues hits the streets, and it's all
Yep.
dirty and gross New York.
Yep.
And then you got like Law and Order, and for a minute, I don't know if you watch Law and Order, but I do. The first episodes they were in the street, but then they started
Yeah.
to bring it in where they're now in people's homes. It's a little more cleaner, and then you make your way to like CSI,
But then
and now
they,
it's cleaner.
Yeah,
and,
there's SVU,
yes,
there's CS, like,
and now it's like evidence, because I'm like Perry Mason and stuff, or even before then, like how do you find a killer? You have no technology. So I watch that now just because I'm just like, how do they find anybody? They didn't have fingerprints. They didn't, you know what I mean? So it's like,
You know what's interesting about that? Because I love the fact that you brought that up, and so, and this is one reason why it's also difficult to do a podcast with me is because I've had so many interests, and I just the way that my brain works, I'll like think about something and I'll spend 3 weeks just doing a deep dive on
Yes,
it, and then it's there in my brain forever.
yes, I love it.
You know, it's some people remembered physics. I remember
Right.
this type of stuff.
Exactly.
But what's really fascinating is when if you look at those old shows through the lens of modern crime and justice, and like for example, I remember at an event here where we were showcasing state's attorneys, and somebody challenged one of the state's attorneys about a ruling that they made when they were a judge to convict like an 11 or 12-year-old as an adult based off of a bad confession. And then evidence like 2 or 3 years later showed, oh no, they didn't do it. They were just bullied into making the confession. And if you think of like, it's not Kojak, who was the guy, Columbo.
Okay.
You know, just one more question.
Yeah, just
By the way.
I always had just one more question.
And like Columbo, while he wasn't a bad guy in action necessarily, but those last questions might trip somebody up.
Yep.
And then that gets like
Yep.
field sobriety tests, by the way. If you ever are in a field sobriety test, do whatever you need them to do. Just, you know, like as an example, hey, say the alphabet backwards.
Right.
And you'll go, okay, Z, Y, X. You'll start to go through it, and you'll get frustrated and say, man, I can't even do that sober. Even if you are sober, that's an admission that you were not sober at that moment.
I'll
and they
remember
can take
that the next time I decide to.
Yeah, just go through just start from A until the next letter. And
I don't want to get caught by the police.
I mean, nobody wants to, but if you're ever in that situation,
I'll remember
take
this.
as long as you want to do that backwards. Because all they're doing is trying to get you to admit that you're not sober in that
Are
moment.
you speaking from personal experience?
I am speaking from experience told to me by people who have been in law enforcement as
Okay.
well as lawyers and other things
Okay.
like that.
Okay.
But
That's good to know.
But that's the interesting thing. Like as you go through
Yeah.
that whole evolution of cop dramas. Because like you think about Miami Vice, how many
my
crimes did they
gosh.
commit while being police
Oh,
officers?
and we didn't mind. We didn't mind it at all.
Because they were the established hero.
Yep.
You know, and then we look at like storytelling. Movies and storytelling is another hobby of mine, I guess to say. And you
I was
know,
going to ask you about that. So, yeah.
I like one of the more Marvel has dominated cinema for the last decade and a half, and say what you will about them, say whatever Scorsese has said about them, they still have woven a 26 movie tapestry into a cohesive story. But there are two villains that I love in the Marvel world, and one of them is Vulture is it Vulture? From the first Spider-Man with Tom Holland. That's just a construction worker dad who was trying to make things good and then found himself in this position where he has no choice, but in order to maintain this life for his family, he has to make these terrible decisions, which kind of tells us that sometimes bad choices are only because those are the only bad choices you have.
The only choices.
Yes. And then, like, Black Panther as well. Killmonger. Is it Killmonger? I think so. He wasn't wrong about what he wanted.
Right.
And what he wanted Wakanda to do.
Yep.
He just kind of went about it the wrong way.
Right.
And in a lot of ways, it was interesting because it challenged that whole concept of Phoenicia here is the hero, so anything that Phoenicia does in the movie, that's heroic.
Right.
Whereas in, and the villain, clearly they're just, everything that they do is bad.
Yep, and that's not always the case.
No, absolutely not. Because we don't blink an eye at a hero in a movie killing a bunch of people because they're doing it for the right reason.
Right.
But
how come the bad guy's reason is not the right reason?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, for him,
Yeah, and that's one of the things I think, in some ways, I miss about 90s action movies, is that clearly this guy with mounds of cocaine murdering some woman at the beginning while videotaping himself, who knows what he was doing with that afterwards. Let's just establish that they're terrible. It's like, hey, we're opening up the story by having this person kick a little dog.
Yep. So now you hate him.
Yes, this is why you need to hate him. Yeah, I think that's it's a fascinating evolution in storytelling. I feel like in the last 10 years we've been in this golden age of storytelling, especially in television. Where TV, in a lot of ways, is better than movies.
Yeah.
And it's really kind of challenging.
I thought that happened when they started bringing, like, the Hollywood actors to TV. Remember they started that?
Oh, yeah.
And then TV became good.
Honestly, I've been in the copious amounts of downtime that I've had this summer. I was rewatching some older stuff to see how well they held up. And a great example of that is Smallville.
Okay.
Which... it's a silly teen drama around, Superman and his early years. But
Yep. I've watched my share of Smallville.
Yeah.
I've been watching Frasier.
Old or new?
The old Frasier.
Yes.
Because I still love the apartment, and it's like 30 years old. But I'm like, his apartment still looks nice.
His apartment is amazing. It's got a giant open primary space.
Right, he was ahead of his time. It's 1994, but it still looks great.
Yeah, I would 100. I mean, I shouldn't say anything because my apartment looks like a Miami Vice villain moved to Chicago.
Oh.
There's a lot of turquoise, a lot of frosted glass.
Do you have like a fur or something thrown somewhere?
I have a fuzzy carpet.
Okay.
In a corner. But yeah,
You got like an IROC Z or a Trans Am poster somewhere?
I no, actually I have
Okay.
most of my photography is up
Okay.
on my walls because I'm a narcissist like that.
Do you watch Mary Tyler Moore?
I have not in years.
Oh, her apartment is I love the sunken, like the...
Oh, conversation pits.
Yes.
They need to bring those back.
I know, they're so great. And they're like, they just seem so comfortable and cozy, and I love that whole walk down, pillows thrown.
My house buying fantasy is finding a place that hasn't been touched since either like the 1960s through the early 80s.
That would be great.
And then it's my choice to, update certain things like maybe the oven, but I would love to have a newer, more efficient oven, but keep that facade of the original.
You know what I've seen lately is wood paneling.
Oh yes.
But crazy thing, you go in my grandma's basement, It's wood paneling. And then she even had like the Formica table that like now I see in like Crate and Barrel sometime, and I'm like, we got the real deal right here.
Yes.
I'm like, have we ever come that far now forward that we are back to this?
I'm all for it, save for linoleum floors.
That's the only thing that has to go.
Yeah, that if we can stick with wood flooring. That actually, I saw a house that hasn't been touched since probably 1958. It had like a tiki bar in the basement.
Yeah.
But
my grandma has a little bar, same. And the low couches are they're like from the Brady Bunch and all that.
Yeah, there was a cleaner design. I feel like there are some color choices that we can improve on.
You don't want that. What is it? The orange and what was the green
baby
called?
poop orange
Yes.
and baby poop green.
Just let you know what year it is.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, you can have on a blue, but wait, that's a 1960s blue? Like you can tell the blues based off.
There's one of the things that I loved about Stranger Things is everybody whenever someone says, "Oh, let's have an '80s party," and everyone's in neon. That was like 1988. '80s for the most part was brown, and just various shades of brown.
Our kitchen was brown. We had like the brown floor and the brown, like it was a brown and orange mixed together wallpaper in the kitchen.
Yep, my mom, for a good portion of my childhood, had a brown on brown carpeting in her kitchen.
Ooh, lots of brown. But that was after the avocado green, though. That was like the avocado green ushered in
The brown.
the browns.
Yes, the brown stood on the shoulders of avocado.
They did. I've already talked to people about, starting groups. You've started sort of the dancing group. Is there anything else you think that the club could use as far as group and interests?
If I have, depending on my bandwidth, I've actually been interested in starting the photography group again. But one of the things that I really want to start with, and I've already started some conversations with people at the club, is early on, Liz Jaswick started up this group called the Flying Solo Group. And the concept was that if there was like an event, like Washington's dinner, birthday dinner, or something along those lines, and your spouse or partner, or you're just by yourself, you wanted to go, but you didn't know where to be, or you didn't know who would be there, you could sign up for the Flying Solo option, and they would put you at a table with other people. And it's a great idea. It's a great concept. It helps try and create a welcoming environment for people. But you're basically saying, hey, I want to do this thing. I'm lonely, though. And so I think that there was a little bit of a stigma about that. So what I want to create is a society within the club called the Engagement Envoy. Tom Bennett and I kind of workshopped that name together. And basically is you join the Engagement Envoy, and you agree that when you go to events, we might get to like a lapel pin that is easily sticks out. And you are basically saying to people, if you don't know anybody in this room, you can approach me, and I will introduce you to people. I will help you make you feel welcome, so on and so forth. And then that way, when there are people that are new to the club, we could just say, hey, look for somebody with the Engagement Envoy pin and ask them, hey, I'm new here, or something along those lines. And they might be able to help you feel more comfortable, introduce you to people that might have similar interests, etc. It's something that with my admissions interviews, I always tell people, you should go to the First Friday event.
Yeah.
It's going to be intimidating. You're
It
going to
is.
meet your cohort of your group that month at first, which is great, get to know those people, but then you're going to walk up into a room with 200 people who all know each other.
Right. And you feel like you're in high school again and
Yes.
don't know anyone.
And so I always tell them, find me and tell me if there's some interest group or other thing, if you just want to meet people, and I will make a point to introduce you to somebody who may know somebody about it.
Nice.
And so I think that is I think that's something that might help the stickiness.
Yeah.
Because while this is a social club, and most people do join with the idea of socializing, it's harder to do. Like I've been blessed with. It's not a lack of fear, because I still feel nervousness when I walk into a giant room of people, but it's where I can at least pick out somebody, start a conversation with them, and then try and build a connection with them in some way.
Right.
And a lot of people, and people that might be looking to join a club, a social club, to meet new people, may not necessarily have that instinct. And I say instinct, but it is a skill that you can develop.
It is.
And
Because
so,
I've seen people get off the elevator and turn into this crowd of happy
Yes.
hour, or at happy hour, and it's like, oh, you just see everybody huddled together, and you're just like trying to make your way in. So that's actually a very good idea. And
Yeah.
I hope you guys get that off the ground.
I hope so too. That's going to be one of my campaigns for 2025.
I'm glad that you were able to spend some of your downtime that you had this year here at the club.
Yes.
I hope it filled a void while you weren't working.
Absolutely, it really did. And with the relationships that I've made here, and not from even a networking perspective, but just from a friend support perspective, super helpful. And knowing that I could come here and see somebody and sit down with them and just chat with whatever's going on in my life. And everybody here is the two things that I like to say about this place is that everybody is here with the sole purpose of making new connections and making real new connections.
Right.
And everybody here is usually in the top 10% of their field. People who are here are generally not just like lazy, or they're all driven, they're all thoughtful in what they do, and it's good people to be around. I like to be around people who have a sense of purpose, and a drive to fulfill that purpose, and this is a place to find that.
Thank you so much, Tom, for taking
Thank you
time
for
out of your
having me.
day. Good luck on your new position.
Thank you very much.
And this has been another great episode of the 6-5, and I will see you next time.